everyone. I'm Jancy McPhee, and I'm the Executive Director of SciArtExchange. Welcome to Design Your Habitat. We have a wonderful guest today, Dr. Annahita Nezami. She's a PhD psychologist working in private practice in London. Annahita, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to talk with you today, and I'm excited to share with you more about the overview effect.
Annahita has devoted her professional career to researching and simulating the Earth-gazing experience, otherwise known as the overview effect, using virtual reality. Can you please tell us a little bit more about the overview effect, Annahita?
The overview effect is a term coined by Frank White, a dear friend and colleague of mine now, and it describes the experience astronauts have when all cosmonauts, when they go into space and see planet Earth firsthand. And it's an awe-inducing experience, and it gives the feeling gives them this immediate sense of interconnection with the world and nature, and it changes them afterwards as well. It happens to many astronauts and cosmonauts, and there's also growing evidence that it's happening across the globe for cosmonauts, astronauts, as well as the ESA astronauts, as well as the NASA ones.
That's really interesting. So what you're telling us is that there's a change in perspective.
That's right.
By viewing the Earth from space, or I think initially you could say that perhaps the opportunity began when we had the astronauts go to the moon and they were able to look back at the Earth. So what can you give us a little bit more of the details on sort of the complexity of the effect? You know, what's actually happening when somebody sees the Earth from space? I'm just really curious. I've seen a lot of details. We've referred to the Earth as fragile and a pale blue dot and hanging in the void. You know, is there some physiology behind all of this? What have you learned about this?
Well, what I've learned is that the overview effect is a very complex phenomena, and it is multi-layered, and it can have varying levels of intensity. You know, the effect can vary with different people. And of course, things like personality and culture and, you know, your approach to it will impact the experience. But I think the most interesting thing that I discovered alongside other people like David Yaden, and as Frank White has spoken about this as well, is that there is a cognitive dissonance. It's not just this, it is pleasurable experience to see Earth, but it also creates a cognitive dissonance when you see planet Earth in its glory, in its beauty, but also the scars and the wounds, if you like, and seeing what human civilization, the impact we have had on this fragile planet that is bursting with life and moving and changing, it creates this cognitive dissonance. But also it, for many astronauts and some of the ones that I spoke with, it's also an existential thing. Of course, you're looking out the other way to space as well, and the contrast between all this life here compared when you look out the other way where it's blackness, and of course there's energy there and things like that, but there's blackness and darkness. And so it brings up existential issues and for some spiritual issues around existence, life and death and togetherness and all of these things. But the major thing, I think, is this cognitive dissonance that it creates, which of course we know that can change behavior, that can create a conflict between our beliefs, you know, the beliefs we hold and the new views and beliefs that are before us. And that conflict, that sort of friction creates, moves us towards changing our behaviors and attitudes in a meaningful way. But that was one of the most significant things, I think. I mean, other things are that, of course, the experience itself in its entirety is pushing people beyond their comfort zones, and also there is a sense of detachment from everyday life, and that detachment is really important because you are obviously in the spaceship, in the ISS, and you're up there, and you're not part of Earth, you're not connected to Earth, and then the nostalgia around that and the feelings around that is very important when you're looking back, that sort of physical disconnection from Earth. And of course, things like meditation, for example, you know, we disconnect from self, don't we? And that's quite an interesting idea, that we're disconnecting from Earth, and somehow that broader perspective, as well as that physical disconnection, allows us to experience something more powerful.
That's incredible. And a lot of things that you've talked about are actually incredibly appropriate, because we are talking today on Earth Day for 2020. And a lot of the concepts you've brought up are things that everybody wants to remember and talk about. They should remember it on all days during the year, but having an Earth Day event helps us to think about how we have impacted our planet and the way we might want to change our behavior. And you can see, I've heard from many astronauts, you can see pollution from the sky,
right.
You can see real changes in the ecosystems from the sky, and I'm guessing from your description that when you see that from space, it's an even more dramatic understanding, and it does lead to changes in behavior. And I have seen many of our astronaut colleagues devote their lives afterwards to being the change that they want to see. And that's a very powerful event.
So powerful. And I think everyone I spoke to was devoted. They became ambassadors for Earth in one way or another. Nicole Stott, the wonderful Nicole Stott that you interviewed, she, you know, uses art and has so many wonderful projects helping people through artwork and through ideas around the orbital perspective or the overview effect. And again, Ron Garan, who I spoke with as well. And so just, it's really powerful how they are moved. And many of the astronauts, of course, there is a shift, but if you think they're engineers, they're scientists, they're fighter pilots. And to me, that was so powerful, that sort of how they devoted their lives afterwards to this cause, in a sense, to planet Earth, to nature, to life, which is wonderful.
And it's also very apropos for what's going on right now, because one of the goals of Design Your Habitat is that we're really helping to put everybody on a virtual united journey. And what better way to really get that perspective than to leave the planet and see it from a distance. And we have a lot of different groups that are trying to really understand the overview effect, and also, you know, try to simulate it so that all of us can have that experience. And some of those approaches include actually helping people to get a little further off the planet into space, and others are using simulations that are Earth-based, just like you are. So, but before we get into talking about your virtual reality, I was wondering if you could tell everyone a little bit about your journey. How did you end up devoting your life to this overview effect? Please share a little bit about that.
For me, I from a very young age, I've been into, you know, a novice space traveler in my own imagination, right? I think you and I were speaking, and I was saying that I'd never have the courage to actually do it, but in my mind, just sort of getting myself there has been really relaxing. And you know, as small as when I was as small as sort of 1 or 2, my mum used to put my cot outside. We used to have this wall garden, and you know, when I was restless, and I would, you know, look up to the night sky, and apparently that would calm me. And I really have had this affinity, this closeness to space exploration, so in my own mind, I could never be an astronaut, but, you know, I just have this closeness with all things space related, all space movies, everything like that. And even to the point where I used to relax myself, you know, if I ever felt tense or stressed, one of the ways I would relax myself would be, I would imagine myself in space and I would be counting stars, for example. So you know, it goes to extremes, my love for space. But so for me, it sort of started way back to when I was a kid. And then there was a period, I suppose, I sort of had a bit of distance with it. And then while I was studying for my doctorate, I had to come up with an idea. And I was around 30, and I was really having a mini existential crisis because because I was 30 and I suddenly, time was clicking and ticking, and things became very, very deep for me. And, you know, I became aware of time, of death, mortality, a lot more than perhaps I had in my 20s. And in that place, and while I was doing my doctorate, I was thinking about what I can do and what, you know, what research would be meaningful and enjoyable. And then I sort of returned back to space. And actually the direction I did that was through quantum physics. Again, very, very little reading I did around quantum physics and, you know, idea of synchronicity and idea of sort of oneness and spooky science and all of this. And somehow that led me back to, you know, this idea of the overview effect and space travel and how people change as a result of that.
Well, one of the things we talk about a lot here at SciArtExchange is how people ultimately find that their career path is influenced by all sorts of things in their background, whether it's the things that they studied or their experiences. It sounds like you are a space traveler, even if you're not physically going there. And I totally understand there's something incredibly hypnotic when you can lie down and stare into the sky and see all the stars. And incidentally, I'll relay one experience. So I grew up on the East Coast, and it was a very populated place. So there was a lot, East Coast of the United States. So there was a lot of light pollution. And I remember as a kid just loving to look into the sky and see the stars. And then I was fortunate as more sort of somewhere in my late 20s, I think, I was able to go on a short trip to the Caribbean. And I came out one night from eating dinner and looked up in the sky, and there were so many stars.
Right.
The contrast was absolutely incredible. I was used to there being lots of stars, but there were billions and billions of them.
It's
and
amazing.
It was absolutely incredible. So that experience of actually, it for me, it was a little bit of a perspective changing event as well, because I wanted to know, why have I never seen so many stars before? And it is because we can't, you know, when we're in our big populated cities, it blocks out our ability to see them. You really need to go someplace where it's dark and there's no haze of pollution. And so I have my own little mini overview effect that way.
But I think that's really important, because I think that you can, you know, and again, Frank White has spoken about this amongst other people, that you can have the overview effect or a version of it, you know, that feeling of oneness and connection through these experiences that you just wonderfully described, or through meditation, or, you know, nature walks, or forest bathing, as they call it. So it can happen in different ways. Of course, one of the most profound ways that it happens is for the astronauts and cosmonauts seeing Earth. That's the most awe-inducing natural landscape that we have. But there are other ways we can do it as well.
And we're about to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about the work that you've done to try to simulate that effect, to make it more accessible to everyone. Just wanted to relay one more little story. I think I would get little shades of the overview effect when I used to hike a lot, and it was really an amazing experience for me to get to the top of a mountain with a 360-degree view and looking down. And what I found is the experience of doing that was always a very calming moment for me. And again, it also gave me perspective. It made me feel a little bit smaller, but not in a negative way, just in a sort of peaceful way. You know, I'm just a small element in a very large world.
Right.
And of course, I am naturally very interested in thinking of us as humanity. And I think many of us share the idea that we want to proceed further in space exploration as one planet.
Right.
And so maybe someday both of us will have the opportunity to have this amazing view from space. But in the absence of being able to get off the planet that far, please tell me a little bit about what is VROE?
Well, I just want to say that I'm so excited about this sort of for us, you know, mere human beings back down on planet Earth, us simple sort of day-to-day human beings, to have the opportunity to fly out. I'm not sure if I'll be one of the first to do it, but I'll certainly do it at some point once we have some brave people going out. And also, I just wanted to say about awe. You know, you talked about being at the top of the mountain, but awe, of course, we know is it has this impact where it makes us feel small but connected. So that sense of smallness is okay. We can tolerate it, and actually feels good because we are connected to so much and so many bigger and more wonderful things.
Well, I totally
Yeah.
agree. And I haven't, I live here in Houston and I haven't been up a very tall mountain for quite a while, but it's inspiring me to make sure that I get that opportunity again soon.
Well,
So
you're
yes.
inspiring me. But yes, VROE. Yes, so VROE has been going on for a long time. Obviously, since 2012. That's my doctorate. I finished my doctorate in around 2016, towards the end of 2016, and since then. It's just been, and you probably can relate, as can some of the other speakers and our people listening, that it's one of those projects that it's a passion. I've been doing it, and it's not sort of something that I've been doing to necessarily make any money. I've been doing it for almost, I think, 10, 12 years now. So it's just been going on and just organically going on. I've been collecting ideas and writing things and building things that sort of but more recently it's sort of taken hold, and in the last sort of 18 months we've got a small team together. We've had a bit more sort of interest in the project, more interest in terms of funding and support, and so it's sort of picked up pace from just this sort of organically growing fun, just me and a friend in a room.
Oh, I totally understand running things just you, and if you're lucky, you've got a friend in the
Right.
room.
Right,
So,
exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. Some of the time, just me in the room. I didn't want to sound too for
yeah,
10
no,
years, just me in a room. But anyway, so, and now it's built momentum, and it's really, really exciting because not only it's exciting because so many other people are doing variations of the project in one way or another, and I think that's really exciting. But also it's exciting because we're beginning to realize that digital therapeutics, in a sense, or virtual reality, can be a really helpful tool to not only create these awe-inducing experiences, but to help people either reach meditative states, or to help people, you know, in the end of their, you know, for example, end of life care really needs a look at the moment in terms of, you know, helping people through the dying process, or helping people just get shots of, you know, awe into them or into their life, or connect back to nature through technology. So it's a really exciting times because we're really seeing it take off. Whereas 10 years ago, VR was sort of is still, but now it's kind of digital therapeutics is getting big. But more than that, I think it's become something that I've realized that I have to devote, and I want to devote my whole life to, in one way or another, you know, and I'm okay with that. You know, I'm happy with that.
so can you explain just a little bit about what you're thinking is the way you would actually apply this work? Is this something that we'll have to go to a specialized center in order to experience, or will you have some things that people could
Mm-hmm.
pick up and use in their own houses? What's your vision here?
Right. So the actual experience incorporates sort of a meditative script, if you like. So you would get the virtual reality headset, you put it on, and there is a meditative script there. There's also obviously wonderful views of planet Earth and space. There's going to be wonderfully composed music as well that it would be playing, and also there's going to be some animation added on, because the guys at iSpace Lab recommend that if you want to have an impactful experience and trying to replicate what the astronauts and cosmonauts experience, you need to sort of add a few more layers to it, like music and meditation and the rest of it. So
it sounds like you're adding a lot of creative media to the project. So, you know, it's another example of integrating the power of the arts. You know, you mentioned music, you mentioned animation, and I'm sure you think very carefully about the imagery you use in virtual reality, and sounds like it's a multi-sensory experience. And everyone responds to slightly different information. So by doing that, I think you can ensure that there's at least something for everyone in the portfolio.
Right, exactly. And I think, you know, when I described it to you in our email correspondence, I described it as tech meeting art meeting psychology, because it has become really the art part is a huge part of this, you know, in terms of the music and the variations in the scene and how we draw people in, and even poetry. You know, it's meditation, but we're kind of using aspects of poetry, and so it's been a real creative process for myself and my small team. And I think so those layers that are sort of weaved in, and people then put on this headset, the practical sort of putting on the headset, and they sit down and they have this VROE experience. The demo and the pilot that we have got at the moment is 15 minutes, but the actual end sort of program we're hoping will be 30 to 45 minutes. We're doing a demo and pilot so that we can test and we can just get an idea of how it's impacting and get some research and data and then you know, be able to then perfect.
As scientists, it's important for us to really understand what we're doing, and you know, even though it's a behavioral change, and as you mentioned, an opportunity to really get a new perspective. There's a lot of data that we can take to maximize the effectiveness of your system. So that sounds excellent.
Right, exactly. So we're looking at the moment at efficacy, so immediate, but in the long term, it's definitely going to be the effectiveness with people. But the key thing is that I think what our dream is, and this is the long dream, and again, there are other people doing this, that we're hoping that, you know, we can reach vulnerable groups, we can reach, you know, whether it's prison population, palliative care, and really help people journey inside, use outside space to bring it in, right? And help people reach that place of peace or euphoria or calm or inside of themselves. And I think that's what's exciting, because it's almost like we feel like part of this movement that is helping people access that. And I think that's so exciting.
Well, and I think that's a great intro for us to talk a little bit about, do you have any tips based on your research with OE and your experience as a psychologist that you can share with everybody who is in a confined or more confined and isolated place? They're not able to talk in person with everybody that they want to talk to. We're all doing everything online, you know, things like that. What little ideas can you share to help everybody that is interested in your work and the power of the overview effect?
So I think what I'll do is break that down. So there's some practical tips that I'd love to share. Some of the practical tips that many of you will already know, and some of us will be implementing it better than others, and that's fine. In these circumstances, we have to be a little bit relaxed. But, you know, routine, just having that routine day to day is really important. You know, when you're at home, you know, getting out of your clothes, getting changed, setting an alarm, going to bed at the same time. Now, if you're a night owl like I am, you know, I go to bed at 12 every night and I wake up at 7 or 6:30 the next day. That's okay. but keep it the same, keep consistent, consistently keep it the same. And I think the other thing is, while you're at home, try to incorporate fun into your life. And it's been great because I've been talking to a lot of my friends and some of my clients who are younger, and they've introduced me to TikTok. For example, I don't post videos live, but I certainly, me and my daughter, we have fun with that, and we create things and so on and so forth. And then also, of course, just being aware of what you're eating and putting in your body at this time is really important. I don't want to preach. I'm not a school teacher. I'm not headmistress, but things like that are so important. But in terms of, I think what I'm doing and the VROE side of things, of course, meditation is really important, and breath work and breathing. I like to think of us as either the demigods or the parents of our internal system. And we need to have a line of communication with our internal world, especially at times like this. And so therefore we need to, use breath work. And there's so much available on YouTube. Breathing, slowing down the breathing, whether you do 3 minutes in the morning, breathing in for 4, breathing out for 4, or breathing in for 4, pausing and breathing out for 6, just ways to signal to your system that, what, don't worry, it's okay, I'm okay, things are all right. And for example, visualization, if you have that ability of the third eye, some people don't, a small minority can't, but if you can visualize quite effectively and easily, then trying to just take a moment and, thinking of a relaxing space, whether it's space or the beach,
or the overview effect.
Or the overview effect, and Earth, which is the most wonderful one for me to bring to mind. And using that power to visualize, that superpower of imagination and visualization, to take 5 minutes out and travel somewhere else. It's okay to do that. We all need to escape. Healthy escapism is a good thing. Unhealthy escapism is avoidance, so we don't want to do that. But healthy escapism is good. So things like that for me, and of course all the usual, going for walks and so on and so forth.
So that's great. You've mentioned a couple of things. Go ahead and make things and explore your creative side. Don't be afraid. And we're also that's another aspect of Design Your Habitat, is we're trying to give some suggestions of things that people can create, share them on social media, or submit them through our system. They don't have to be works of art. This is not a contest. This is just an opportunity to do something and bring us together by sharing what you're doing. And I think that's really excellent. And then keeping with your routines and taking advantage of our little miniature opportunities to have our own personal overview effects. I think that's excellent. I think it's also very interesting that you told me that in order to make the overview effect accessible in yet another way, you and your colleague Frank White have actually written a children's book. Do you want to tell us just a little bit about that, please?
So over the years, as Frank is, passionate about the overview effect, and as am I, and over the years, we've been in conversation, monthly, bi-monthly, weekly at times, and talking, just checking in, really casual conversations sometimes, and 10 minutes and just checking in. And some point in the last 10 years, well, actually in the last maybe 7 years, we kind of, I think I mentioned to him, wouldn't it be fun? Wouldn't it be great? This is to try to access and reach the children, and sort of we ummed and ahed about it. And then I remember I started a Google document, and then we just sort of started just plodding ideas down. And then sort of, I think it was just recently, really quite recently, that we actually finished it. And it was just sitting there, just in Google Drive.
Well, and I know you're not quite sure how you will share this eventually, but I think it'll be really interesting when you do, and that we'll all look forward to it. My little overview effect artwork today is right here. This is a picture done by Edwin Ninchaga called The Next Frontier, and it's from our Project Mars competition. And that competition was actually a film and poster contest to try to capture in imagery what will we think and feel when we are looking over Mars. So it's a different kind of overview, but isn't that going to be a very interesting and amazing experience? And so I thought it was kind of cool to include that today as sort of the backdrop to our conversation. What do you think that's going to be like? And do you think it will have similarities or be totally different? I mean, I know we're just making stuff up here, but I'd love to hear what you think.
What fun, what fun. It's lots of fun to think about this pending project that's sort of relatively quite nearish in happening. And I think, so first I think you have to think about the distance between Earth and Mars. So the length it's going to take for people to actually get to Mars, where they're going to see Earth sort of gradually get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And
that could be kind of, that will have a great impact as well, to sort of see Earth vanish is going to have a very strange experience, a disconnect actually, and it could be very scary.
Right, exactly. And I think there are dark sides to the overview effect. There's this sort of positive, this is, if you think of it as a continuum, and you've got this sort of this side, there is a sort of a darker side to the overview effect, I always think. But yeah, so then they get there, and all along they've sort of gradually seen Earth disappear, and they've then spent some sort of time in space without Earth at all visible. And then they get to Mars and they look over Mars. I think from just sort of trying to brainstorm on it, I think immediately it's nostalgia is what comes to mind. I think they will be in awe of the red planet, this big red planet in front of them, such a contrast to our planet. So there'll be nostalgia. I think there will be a yearning, a missing. But I think again, about Mars, what's beautiful, and I'm sure the people that travel there will have this insight, is that, of course, at one point we think, and I think know pretty much, that Mars was like Earth, right? It's sort of, you're probably more of the expert in that area.
Well, we're still waiting for all the data on that, but yes, there's a lot of evidence that's pointing us in that direction. And it's very interesting, because that leads us also to the conversation of, can we make it more like Earth once we get there? And of course, these are not the near-term projects, but that in itself is also a very interesting kind of thing to explore. But when I was thinking about it, I was, it just makes my heart beat faster to think about coming within the view of this massive red planet. I mean, even the color is significantly different from that of Earth. It's an excitement. Mm-hmm. I would imagine seeing Earth from space, the blue and the white and the green and the brown. It's a calmer feeling.
Right.
And Earth would be, and Mars would be exciting.
Right.
And you can hear that in the music that people create about Mars,
right,
and the mythology and the legends.
Right.
But wouldn't it be awesome to be one of those first few people to actually have that overview effect and bring that sensation, the tail of that sensation, back with them? I just think that's super cool.
So cool, mind-blowingly cool, that I think, and I think you wonderfully touched on something very important, which is, yes, the difference in color and size and perspective really shifts. And of course, yes, excitement, of course, red and excitement and blues and greens with calmness. And I think that's wonderful that you mentioned that, and it sort of bypassed my mind. But as soon as you brought it to light, I thought that was really important. But also, of course, that nostalgia and missing Earth mixed in with the excitement. And of course, you really are aliens stepping into a new world. You really are Martians, and well, you will become Martians, but you're aliens. So it's just fascinating, and I'm so excited. It's mind-blowingly exciting. We are explorers at heart. I truly believe, we are destined to do this. I know there's different arguments for and against, but I think we're explorers at heart, and we are sort of somehow destined in our DNA to be doing this.
Oh yes, I totally agree with you. There's a huge need for us to explore the unknown and push our boundaries even further and further. And
Hmm.
that's also a very interesting thing to think about and talk about. I'm really, really grateful that you took your time out. I know you're super busy with your practice, your family, and your dream of VROE. So thank you so much for sparing the time and also sharing the tips about how we can all keep ourselves mentally and physically fit as we are in our more isolated and confined habitats. And part of that is these exercises of thinking about being somewhere else and in a
Hmm.
healthy way.
Hmm.
And maybe some people will give us their Martian habitat designs or something like that. There's a lot of creativity that can go into thinking about that. So
Right.
thank you so much, Annahita. I really appreciate your joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for a wonderful interview, and I look forward to seeing you hopefully one day across the seas.
I really hope so too. Have a great rest of your day.